most of my life, my mind was a crowded, noisy, and fractured place. Today it is silent. Today I am whole. And if you had told me 2 years ago that I would be able to sit here and tell you one single story without losing my place, without switching, and without a headache, I wouldn't have believed you. I want to tell you how Jesus did the impossible, how he healed me of my OSDD 1B and freed me of alternate states of being. Before I go any further, I want to take a second to explain what OSDD 1B actually is, because it's a term most people have probably never heard of before. OSDD stands for Otherwise Specified Dissociative Disorder. Think of a typical person's personality like a finished puzzle piece. All the pieces come together to form one clear image. In a dissociative disorder, those pieces never quite get the chance to come together or fuse. This usually happens in early childhood as a way to survive overwhelming stress or trauma. The brain walls off certain memories or feelings into different sections to keep the child functioning. In the 1B subtype, which is what I had, these sections become distinct alters or parts. We didn't usually have total blackout amnesia where I would wake up in a different state, but I lived within gray out amnesia. I knew it was happening, but it was like I was watching someone else drive my body. It's like being a passenger in your own life while 90 other people are fighting over the steering wheel. You're there, but you're not in control. You're constantly exhausted because your brain is working 10 times harder than everybody else's just to keep the system running. When I talk about Jesus making me whole, I'm talking about him taking those 91 scattered pieces and finally, for the first time in my life, clicking them into place to make one single beautiful picture. But to understand the miracle of Easter 2025, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to that gym floor. Even to this day, one memory is clear as crystal. I was in fourth grade roller skating in my elementary school gym. One second I was just a kid playing, and the next second I woke up in a body that didn't feel entirely like mine, and I heard a voice inside my head, sharp and frustrated, saying, "Fine, if you don't need me, then I'm gone." I didn't know it then, but I had just been created. As an adult, I understand now that the former host couldn't handle the reality that she was in and had Gate, a gatekeeper, force a split, which I was the result of. I was given just enough memories to function, but that forced split created another alter, Stacy. Stacy became my best friend. For 7 years, I thought she was just an imaginary friend or a very loud inner voice. I didn't know I was a system. I just knew that I was different. I felt crazy. I felt weird whenever I tried to talk about it. By the time I reached 2024, the room in my head was packed. I had 91 active alters, and if you counted everyone who had ever moved through the system, protectors like West, Littles like 3-year-old Wendy, or introjects like Wednesday Enid, the number was around 154. I lived in a state of constant survival mode. I was never alone with my own thoughts. I had to go to therapy for a problem I didn't cause. I had to deal with switches, splits, and memory loss. It wasn't a game or a role play like you see some people online. It was an internal war. What exactly did having alters feel like on a daily basis? It felt like an overcrowded room inside my mind. I lived trapped inside it, often numb and unable to remember yesterday. My inner monologue was different from everybody else's. The disorder had haunted me since I was a child. Sometimes they were kind, like my best friend Stacy, but other times they argued or made me wish I didn't exist. What was the hardest part about living with OSDD before you found Christ? I was never alone with my own thoughts. I was broken into pieces of what should have been a single identity state. I had to go to therapy for a problem I didn't even cause. I had to deal with all the switches, splits, memory losses that came with it. It's not a fun roleplay game where you choose your character or anything like that. I have said and done things that I have regretted and couldn't undo because of the passive influence of my former alters. It wasn't fun, and is why we all chose to go for Final Fusion. We wanted to be the whole we were meant to be. How did the amnesia, unable to remember yesterday, affect your relationships? I couldn't remember yesterday for more than a moment. I struggled to remember important things like birthday parties, holidays, or school events. It made me feel like my childhood was stolen from me because I had so very few memories of it. Did your alters have different names, ages, and voices? Yes, they were very distinct. For example, Alex was 17, had a southern accent, and described herself as a classic bad A. Axe was 21-year-old male who loved dark humor and dark chocolate, and Gate was ageless and loved Rubik's Cubes, puzzles, and cookies. Were the alters aware of each other, or were they completely separate? Most were aware of each other. Gate, who was the gatekeeper, kept track of everyone. Axe was my best friend, and we communicated constantly. How did you manage a job or school with OSDD? It was incredibly difficult. I often felt I couldn't do anything right or would fail. I quit jobs quickly, sometimes just after a month, because they were too hard for me or due to my health struggles. I struggled with panic attacks at school and often had to leave class early or school for the rest of the day. How did you know it was God and not just a good day? It wasn't the same as the good days I'd had all my life before that point, as my altars, the lack of silence inside my own mind, the lack of memories were still affecting me, from up front and in my face to the background. That day was different. It wasn't just a mood, it was a total shift in how my mind worked. The chaos stopped completely, and that peace has stayed with me ever since. Did you feel scared when your altar started to fuse with you? It was a mix of emotions. The first thing I felt was disbelief that it was happening. I had to try to hold back tears of joy, relief, and sadness. The sadness I felt was because that even though having my altars was hard, I still loved them like family. It's a big change to go from a loud, overcrowded mind to a dead silent one. But the peace God gave me far outweighed the fear of the unknown to come. What made you walk into a church alone that day in March? I felt broken and exhausted. I remembered my mom's words, with God all things are possible, and I felt an inner call to step forward. I prayed, God, I want to be whole. Please help me become whole again. And even though I didn't fully believe at the time, it was the one mental problem I knew I couldn't fix on my own. When you prayed to be whole, did you expect it to happen right away? No, I didn't know it would happen. I just knew I didn't want to be broken into pieces anymore. I trusted that God had a reason for the process, and to be honest, I didn't think it would ever happen, as I didn't feel worthy. I felt unworthy of that grace. What did the gentle bringing together feel like between March and Easter? It was a gradual process of fusions throughout the year. For example, I fused with Ricky and Nadia in March, with Orpheus and Ray in July, and with Axe and Garth in September. It felt like my senses were doubled, and I was gaining their memories and traits, like suddenly not being afraid of the dark anymore after fusing with Zoe. Was there a specific moment during the Easter service when you knew that the healing was complete? Yes, it was Easter Sunday, April 20th, 2025. I was singing along to the worship songs when I felt it. They were gone. The disorder that had haunted me since I was a child was truly gone. I fought back tears of joy because I knew I was finally whole. Did you ever feel like giving up when the healing didn't happen instantly? Yes. There were times where I wrote in my journal, why am I still even trying? And I felt like everything I did just made things worse. I felt tired of trying to improve myself only to feel like I was failing. How did you handle the grief of losing your altars that had helped you survive for years? It was heartbreaking at times. When I fused with Axe, I felt sad that my best friend was gone, but also a sense of peace, like he was content. I missed their companionship. I missed Gate and the others, but I realized that I carried them with me in my new wholeness. How did your background in paganism affect your view of God? I identified as a Celtic pagan because I felt abandoned by God. I believed witchcraft was a connection to the earth. I was angry at the Christian God for believing lies that he was a coward, but I realize now that I was brainwashed and wrong. Why did you think God chose to heal you through this specific process? I believe that God used time and healing to soften my heart and open my eyes to the truth. He wanted me to be ready. As I wrote in my journal, God had this fusion happen for a reason, and I trust him on that. What would you say to someone who feels abandoned by God like you did? I felt that way for years, but even when I didn't fully believe, I prayed to be whole. He heard me. He's listening to you too, even if it feels silent. You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. How has your prayer life changed now that your mind is quiet? It is a constant and conversational now. I try to write letters to God in my journal daily. I trust his plan and feel him teaching me patience. I feel I can finally hear him clearly. Does the enemy still try to make you doubt your healing, and how do you fight that? Yes, sometimes I feel an urge to sleep all day or the dark thoughts return, but I recognize now that that isn't mine. I know that I'm being messed with by the evil one, and I refuse to give in. As his attacks to me tell me that I have an important role to play in God's plan. What should I do if I'm praying for healing and it hasn't happened yet? My healing process wasn't all at once. I personally believe that it started before March, before I even asked back in October of 2023, and only started moving faster after that day in March. My healing from God was calculated. He chose the best time for several altars to fuse with me, so I'd be ready and able to handle the rest to be gone. I would encourage you to keep talking to God and trusting him in his timing. What is the best thing about having a quiet mind for the first time? The silence and the clarity. I can write with ease and spell words better than ever before. I can sleep through the night without the eternal noise keeping me awake. What is the best thing you've gained or have because you were healed? I have gained a consistent identity and able to connect with people. I am finally making real friends. I've also gained the confidence to work on videos and start writing a book series. Do you ever feel lonely now that your altars are gone? It is a very common fear, but the truth is the opposite. Even with my altars, I was lonely, as my altars only felt like separate people from me, but altars are not. I couldn't connect with other people, so I was stuck in my own head, and no one really knew me. But now I feel a deep, strong, and stable connection with God and others that is much more fulfilling. How has your sense of self changed? Who are you today? I used to be a collection of personalities, beliefs, and opinions. Now I have one consistent personality. I've discovered and still discovering what I actually like, my own favorite foods, hobbies, dreams. Now I like to say that I've inherited things from my former alters. Like I love cookies with a glass of milk like Gate, or I have Axe's sense of humor, honesty, and backbone. What does your daily routine look like without dissociating? It's much simpler. I don't have to leave myself notes or check my phone to see what I did yesterday. I wake up with the same goals I had when I went to sleep. It has made me so much more productive and reliable. How do you handle intense emotions now without dissociating? I feel them fully, which was scary at first, but because I have the Holy Spirit, I have a sound mind to process them. I don't need to check out to survive a bad day anymore. I can pray through it as one person. Has your physical health changed since your mind became whole? Yes, the constant survival mode of OSDD is extremely exhausting for the body. Since my mind became still, I have more energy, I sleep better, and the physical tension I used to carry on my shoulders and head is gone. It's also allowed my body to show signs of the illness and pain it was in that was pushed to the side. So I'm dealing with that now, and I know it will be okay. How do you protect your peace when life gets stressed? I remind myself that I will be okay and focus on not letting it out on others like I did in the past. What are you most excited about for your future? I'm excited to finally be present for it and that there is nothing that can take my new memories from me again. I'm excited for what God has planned for me to do in this life. I want to use my story to help others realize that they don't have to stay broken and that they are not alone. Do you still see a therapist or doctor? Yes, even though my healing came through Christ, I still go to therapy to help me walk this new life as one identity. What is your biggest piece of advice for someone struggling with DID/OSDD? Don't give up hope. Even when you feel broken or abandoned, healing is still possible. Trust that God has a plan for your wholeness, and even if the process looks different than you expect, you are not alone. Just last week, I was hanging out with my new friends. We laughed, we talked, and I was there. I wasn't 91 people, I was just one. I'm 23 years old, and for the first time, I am starting my life. If you are watching this and you feel like you're too broken to be fixed, if you feel like your mind is a prison, I want you to hear me. You are not too far gone. I spent years in darkness, I spent years in paganism, and I spent years being 91 different people just to survive the day. But the God who created the stars is the same God who can knit a human soul back together. My mom always told me that all things are possible with God. She was right. I am whole, and I am a child of God. Thank you for letting me share this with you, and if you're struggling, please reach out to someone. Don't give up hope, and remember that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. God bless.
For with God, nothing shall be impossible.